Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, March 31st, 2017, the WNW 278. And the top story is this ridiculous Russian collusion story that they've been working on. The FBI has been working on since July. And, you know, their probable cause came from that defrocked former MI6 British intelligence agent who was doing opposition research, negative opposition research on Donald Trump that was proven to be totally bogus. You know, about him peeing on Russian beds, and his attorney, Michael Cohen, was colluding with the Russians. Oops, wrong Michael Cohen, not the Trump attorney that works, Michael Cohen that works for Donald Trump. And this is an investigation is going nowhere. And what's piling up are, whether it's Rachel Maddow or whether it's the Democrats, questions. We just have lots of questions. But what's piling up are charges, felony charges about spying, mishandling information, unmasking people swept up in incidental, surveillance, data collection, the giving away of classified information to people who have no clearance to the press. And I just want to bring up this, Donald Trump threw down the gauntlet after Nunes, who went to Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, and said, well, I found all this new information from a whistleblower that had nothing to do with Russia. Now, nobody on the left wants to believe his story, but that's the story. That's the truth. And it's laid out here because the White House invites lawmakers to view surveillance documents. This is the Bloomberg version of this story. The Trump administration invited leaders of congressional intelligence panels to review documents, it said, raised questions about whether government spy agencies improperly identified President Donald Trump's campaign officials and associates in the course of routine foreign surveillance. Well, they improperly handled classified information. They improperly unmasked people. They gave it to reporters and other people. And, I'm not so sure it's routine foreign surveillance. I'm just not so sure of that. How can you capture all of the Trump administration in routine foreign surveillance, including the president himself? It's just routine, unless it's routine for a outgoing administration to spy on an incoming administration, and that's what we're talking about, and spy on them to gather information to destroy and discredit the incoming president and his administration. That's what this is about. And this is why I say that this is I'm not so sure it's routine. And here we have that this gets blurted out over MSNBC, no less, than Morning Joe. Former Obama official reveals pre-inauguration effort to gather intel on incoming Trump team. This is the Breitbart headline, 3/29/17. Evelyn Farkas, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under Obama, who the attorney Jay Sekulow, says she should hire an attorney immediately. And Evelyn Farkas says, and this is what she said on the air, I heard her say it. I was urging my former colleagues, and frankly speaking, that the people on the Hill, the former colleagues, people on the Hill, she was a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under Obama. Her former colleagues, people on the Hill, you mean Democrats? It was more actually aimed at telling the Hill people, you mean Democrats on the Hill trying to dig up dirt on Donald Trump to try to kibosh his presidency and maybe get him impeached, which they're not doing, they're having no luck with. It was actually meant telling the Hill people to get as much information as you can, get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration. Get as much intelligence and information as you can. Surveil the president, get as much information as you can. Is that legal? That's a big question. And then did she have this information if she left, the Obama administration? How does she get classified information? Who else got classified information? Who unmasked, classified these people? Was it Clapper? Was it Loretta Lynch? Was it, under the orders of President Obama? How high up did it go? One felony charge after another about spying, unmasking people that shouldn't be unmasked, about handling classified information. One after another is piling up. Meanwhile, the pile for the Russian collusion is zero, exactly where it was. And let me just pile on the evidence about the spying and about the illegal, felonious activity being conducted, that was conducted against the Trump administration and his team. And here is Judge Napolitano. You know, Judge Napolitano returns to Fox News and stands by his claim Brits spied on Trump. Look at this. I think a lot more is going to come. Now, as somebody that used to say pretty outrageous things on the air, whether it's depleted uranium munitions or, you know, there's a huge nationwide, mortgage robo-signing fraud, perjury and forgery and fraud on the court or whatever, you don't say that the Brits spied on Donald Trump at the behest of the Obama administration. You don't say something like that. You don't blurt something like that on the air. And Judge Napolitano, I'm sure he's sticking by his guns. And, he's the kind of guy that has a reputation that you go, oh, gosh, I can't believe he said that. Well, it must be true. He said he named 3 sources, and one of them ain't Wikipedia either. When you have 3 sources, that to me tells me he's had a lot of conversations with people in the background at Fox and Fox News. And, the general term is 2 sources. I never used Wikipedia as a source. 2 sources. When you have something hot, something big, then they tell you, your bosses say, we need 3 sources. And let me tell you, nobody at Fox News was surprised. I guarantee you he didn't just pop out on the set someday and said, oh, hey, the Brits surveilled and spied on the Trump administration. And they did it by looking at NSA files. They have 24/7 access. The British intel and spy agencies have 24/7 access to NSA records. He sticks by his story. And then Andrew Napolitano says this, because, with this whole populism movement, a lot of people are like, hey, do we really need the spy agency spying on us? Aren't they supposed to be stopping terror? Like they didn't do at, with the Boston Bombers, like they didn't do with San Bernardino, like they didn't do at the Pulse nightclub, like they didn't do at the Vet Center, the Veterans, the Sign Up Center in Tennessee. They're not stopping many of these horrific acts. They didn't stop the horrific acts in Paris with the truck and the shootings and all that. But here is what Napolitano says, and he says, and the American public needs to know more about this rather than less, because a lot of the government surveillance authorities, the government surveillance authorities will expire in the fall. And there will be a great debate about how much authority we want the government to have to surveil us. There is the biggie. And I want to come back to the Democrats. I've actually heard Democrats say on the air, what the Russians did was an act of war. Whoa, you are ratcheting this way up. An act of war? Are you crazy that you're accusing a new? We already are at odds with them in Syria. We already are at odds with the Russians in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine and the border there. And you're going to ratchet this up and say that the Russians have committed an act of war against the United States. And let me tell you what Putin said just this week. Read my lips. Election interference claims are lies. And Putin says all those things are fictional, illusionary, provocations, lies. All these are used for the domestic American political agendas. And what he's talking about is, listen, that this is the best shot that the deep state, the mainstream media, that even the criminal crony class, Democrats and Republicans, trying to knock out Trump. They don't want him there. They don't want to drain the swamp. They don't want him there. They don't want him cutting the budget. They don't want him making nice with Russia. They don't want him cracking down on illegal immigration. They don't want him building a wall. They don't want him. They don't want, no, they don't want that. And then it comes with the media with one big psyop. I was watching the CBS Evening News the other day, and you would think that Donald Trump completely sold out the country, including the Russians, and that was how he got to be president. And he stole the election from Hillary Clinton, even though many top spy chiefs in America said the Russians did not change any vote tallies. They changed nothing. And many people in the alternative media say this was really a counter coup by patriots and by people who did not want Hillary Clinton to win. And she lost by a pretty wide margin. The Russians didn't cause the voters in Michigan and Wisconsin and in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Florida to vote for Donald Trump. She lost by a pretty wide margin. And then we have the, USA Today. Of course, there's never a decent headline about, energy order takes focus off climate, like he's going to destroy the climate. But this is the big one here. They did this big fold out, right? Trump network ties to alleged Russian mob. Trump network's ties to alleged Russian mob. And he's talking about him selling condos to the oligarchs in Russia. I lived in New York for 10 years, from 99 to, 2009. And a lot of Russians bought condos in New York, and he's in the business to build high-rise towers and to sell retail and residential space to whoever. And his apartments go for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. I mean, they go for a lot of money. And basically, he just sold apartments and condos, and there's nothing there. Ties. I mean, he's in business with the Russian mob. It's outrageous. And most of this stuff, if not all of it, happened before the 2016 presidential election. This was a while ago. And hey, newsflash, the Chinese buy apartments in New York. Brazilians buy apartments in New York. People from the UK buy apartments in New York. Donald Trump has had dealings with the Chinese investors, which built a building right around the corner from where I used to live. And this is the smear, the questions. We have a lot of questions. Rachel Maddow was on with some poll. If Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, do you think he should resign or be impeached? 53% said yes. I don't know why that's not 100%. Listen, if Donald Trump colluded with the Russians and basically usurped the election process and cheated his way in to a win, yes, he should resign. He should be impeached. But the only person that cheated that I know was Hillary Clinton with Donna Brazile and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and cheated to get in the primary over there and colluded with journalists. And the journalist, whether it be a Political or New York Times or the NBC, CNBC, they all helped on record. Thank you, WikiLeaks. Via their email tracks on record colluding with the Clintons. And by the way, they're doing a big fold out here, USA Today, about the ties with Russians, right? And Hillary Clinton, while Secretary of State, gets donations from 9 investors, donations to the Clinton Global Initiative, $145 million. This is all brought out, well documented in the Clinton Cash book by Mr. Schweitzer, the author of the book. And 20% of our uranium production ends up in Russian hands. And she got $145 million in donations to her global charity fraud, and that global charity fraud is shutting down. But that doesn't seem to be any kind of a problem for the FBI and Congress. And Adam Schiff, who's the big proponent against Nunes and Donald Trump, who was a big backer of Hillary Clinton, that's not a problem. Really quite unbelievable. And the reason why they're going after Trump, and whether it's, Jean-Claude Juncker, the head of the EU, saying that Trump should be more supportive of the EU. Why? I mean, we just had the hard Brexit out. Britain is leaving the EU. Hooray for them. They have decided to choose freedom instead of the tyranny of the EU. And all the money that they spend on giving the European Union. But, Juncker's like, well, I'm going to try to convince Texas and Ohio to leave the United States if Donald Trump isn't more, supportive of the EU. Is he nuts? Is he crazy? This is the oligarch backlash against what populism, basically freedom and liberty, and not tyranny. And then if you look at, the immigrants, the headlines on USA Today, immigrants who thought they could stay faced new reality. You mean illegal immigrants that thought they could come here and just, set up shop and everything's okay and they could vote in our elections? And I always say this, when I see this immigrant story, the headline immigrant for illegal immigrant, not somebody with a green card, not somebody who's taken a test to be a U.S. citizen. And it didn't take long. Second paragraph, Immigration and Custom Enforcement, ICE, agents are looking for 2 other men who were undocumented immigrants in the neighborhood and started asking Ortiz about his status. We're talking about, people that commit crimes, people who are here illegally, and the first order of business for Donald Trump is, boom, the people committing crimes are out of here. The second order of business for Donald Trump is to cut off the free stuff because he's going to need the money. We just hit, the debt ceiling, which a lot of people haven't been talking about. Finally, USA Today, a couple of weeks after, some neurons touched together for the people at USA Today, and they, Congress races to avert shutdown. April 28th, that will be it. If they don't get a continuing resolution, some kind of a budget deal, some kind of a deal like that. And, that's a big deal at 20 trillion. Hey, at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 trillion, not that big of a deal. At 20 trillion, it starts becoming a much bigger deal. And back to this, the whole idea that the mainstream press is doing, they have a giant psyop. They have a giant psyop to make everything that Trump does look bad. Like this $20 trillion in debt that built all up before he ever got there. And that's why he keeps saying that he's got a mess, that he inherited a mess. Well, the budget is a huge mess. There's no doubt about that. And it's a giant psyop of, we have questions. But they don't have any questions about committed felonies. They don't have any questions about people who unmask people illegally. They have no questions about about President Obama coming out and basically having Organization for Action, which is basically a counter, a black White House, a counter anti-White House. And this is according to James Rickards. James Rickards, I got for an interview. It's taken me a while to get him. The 4-time best-selling author, James Rickards. Here are his books. Here's, The Death of Money. Here's The Road to Ruin, all best-selling things. Here's the paperback version of The Death of Money. I'm missing a book. And, of course, what he's writing about is how things are going to go bad, which is his last book, another best-selling, The New Case for Gold. I don't get paid anything for doing this, folks, but I'm telling you, he has an enlightening, in-depth interview. And he talks about the huge problems that Donald Trump is facing and the factions that are fighting him, and how important it is that you should have some sort of precious metals, tangible assets, things outside the system, and that the system is going to shut down. Not a maybe, not for the grandkids and kids. We're going to, and one of the triggers could be this budget, this $20 trillion debt and this debt ceiling. One of the many triggers that could, catch people totally off guard, and the system could melt down. It's totally unstable. Jim Rickards' early Sunday release, and just to give you a few more headlines to show you just how unstable this is. Just a couple of, this is from Zero Hedge, both of them. Margin debt hits new record high, but analysts say don't worry. Fed's William Dudley, I don't think we're going to remove the punch bowl just yet. If the market was organic and doing well, would everybody need to be, high on cocaine and heroin? That's what Richard Fisher said, the former Fed president. They injected the financial system with cocaine and heroin. And anybody thinking that this is an organic market, anybody doesn't think that some little pin, some little thing could pop this whole market and bring it all down is cray-cray. So, this thing, I just want to circle around one last thing before I go to my last story, and I just feel like I'm obligated to talk about it. This idea that Trump colluded with the Russians is going nowhere. The idea that many laws surrounding collection of data and intelligence and unmasking people and illegally dispersing that intelligence, and why they're doing what the motivation is to embarrass, to cripple the Donald Trump and his administration, the sedition, treason. This is going to mushroom, folks. This is a huge story, and you add that to a very shaky, bloated, a sloppy, debt-loaded world economy, including the U.S. and everybody else, and that's not stability, folks. That's not stability. I talked with Rickards about that as well. And finally, I just want to bring this out, which is preposterous. As a journalist, I used to do lots of hidden camera stuff. I've done dozens of hidden camera stories, and was never successfully sued about anything I ever did. Followed the rules, But I always brought out things that the public needed to know about. And here is the two felony charges for two, I mean, it's like 14 or 15, who secretly filmed Planned Parenthood. We're talking about the Center for Medical Progress, that caught all these doctors, medical doctors, not clerks, almost all medical doctors, talking about the sale of baby body parts, which is illegal. Now, Planned Parenthood says they did nothing wrong. Planned Parenthood and their people say that a lot of states looked into this and no charges were ever filed. But here's what the head of the Center for Medical Progress, David Daladin, in an email to the Associated Press, said the bogus charges, his words, bogus charges are coming from Planned Parenthood's political cronies. The public knows the real criminals are Planned Parenthood and their business partners. And when he talks about their political cronies, well, the former state attorney general, this is happening in California, got a lot of campaign donations from Planned Parenthood. The new and current attorney general of the state of California also got campaign donations from Planned Parenthood. Now, they tried the same thing in Texas, where they filed, some charges on, these people at the Center for Medical Progress, and they got thrown out. And I'm hoping they will get thrown out again. And I wanted to tell you that even some of my far left wackadoodle journalism friends, they didn't do good journalism. Did you look at the tapes? Well, they didn't do. Well, do you know what's their name? Oh, I don't know, but they didn't. They're biased. Center for Medical Progress. I actually went online, spent hours looking at these videos and looking at the raw versions, which they put online. I think they're still online. And one of the charges from Planned Parenthood was they heavily edited, these conversations. Wait, you mean you edited them so much that you changed the whole meeting? Wow. Nobody ever asked Planned Parenthood, where are the places that they aired where they heavily edited these pieces of video when they can go online on the Center for Medical Progress YouTube channel and they could see the raw video. Where did they do that? When she testified in front of Congress, I'm surprised nobody said that. You tell me where, give me some examples of how they totally changed the meaning of something through editing, heavily edited, which is bogus. This is another reason why they want to, a lot of folks in Congress on the right want to cut off funding to Planned Parenthood. And there's no planning to Planned Parenthood. It's planned abortion. There's been all kinds of studies. They give very little resources that go for mammograms or family planning or adoption. The whole thing is about abortion on demand and selling tissue baby body parts. So hopefully they'll get good representation and they'll get good lawyers. And just as a person that believes in the First Amendment and believes that you should be able to, uncover huge misdeeds that the public has the right to know about. I mean, this is a First Amendment attack. And so as a journalist, no. I mean, I think the case they have about privacy is what their case is, what they're going after, privacy. Even though they surveilled them and recorded them in public restaurants and there was no HIPAA laws broken, it's their privacy. So I know, went on a little bit long about that, but that's a big deal. That's a big deal, and hopefully the state of California will not win against these folks. Listen, that's the way I see it, folks. Oh, one last thing. My donations button mysteriously stopped working. That happens to, websites that have alternative news. Things mysteriously break. Anyway, I got it fixed again. Several people had commented that, hey, man, your donations button isn't working. So I had to go in there and fix it. It got unhooked. And so anyway, so I just wanted to make you aware that is hooked back up again. And I wanted to thank everybody for all their donations. That helps us out. Also, all the comments have some of the smartest people on the internet here on USA Watchdog commenting. So, folks, that's the way I see it. Remember, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all, spiritually. Fear not. God the Father is in charge.